Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our live session today. My name is Bruna Smith. I'm on the marketing team at H2O.ai, and I'd love to start off by introducing our speaker, Ellen Friedman, who will share insights on how to overcome the common challenges that businesses encounter in the adoption of AI, as well as the opportunities that can deliver real impact. Ellen Friedman is a technical evangelist at H2O.ai and an international speaker, author, and scientist with a PhD in biochemistry from Rice University. Ellen has been a committer for Apache Drill and Apache Mahout projects. She is a co-author of data-related books published by O'Reilly Media, including AI and Analytics and Production, Machine Learning Logistics, Introduction to Apache Flink, and the Practical Machine Learning series. Before I hand it over to Ellen, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourselves and send your questions in the comments section. We'll have a few minutes for a live Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to all of your questions. So welcome, and thank you for being here with us today, Ellen. Before we start with the questions, any initial thoughts that you'd like to share about yourself or the importance of AI for businesses?
Bruna, thank you for that introduction, and all of you who've joined us. Thanks so much for taking some time today to talk about AI and how to make it practical in your business. And I want to start with this thought just for context setting. The single biggest challenge to AI is to make sure that it is actually connected to or aimed at a practical business goal. And that sounds really simple, but I think that there's a certain kind of excitement around AI, and sometimes people don't think about the fact that it really is a business process. It's not just a technical process. It has to be connected to the business in a practical way. So I want to share a real simple story with you just to kick us off. I have a friend, a colleague that I worked with at another company. He's an excellent data engineer. He had never worked directly with machine learning models. And so just for fun, he wanted to build a toy machine learning model that would do image recognition to be able to tell when a blue jay was pecking the eggs in his hen house at home. And he could catch this bird before it messed up the eggs. And so he used a preformed TensorFlow model. He retrained it on thousands of pictures of hens and blue jays, and he ran the model and tested it. And he was running this just on a little Raspberry Pi, literally out in the hen house, so it didn't have a lot of power, but it worked great. It worked with 96% accuracy. You could tell the difference between a blue jay and a hen. And I said, that's terrific, but let me ask you a question. How long does it take the image recognition to actually take place and give you a response running on this little Raspberry Pi? And he said 30 seconds. And I said, great. How long does it take a blue jay to peck an egg? And he started laughing. He said, well, less than 30 seconds. So that's an example of a model that worked great, but it wasn't properly connected into the real business situation, which is trying to stop the bird from pecking the egg before it messed up his egg. It's a toy example, but I think it really brings home the idea that for a machine learning project, an AI project to work, it's not just the performance of the model, but it's how well it's tied into a business process. Do you have metrics to be able to follow that? Do you have a way to take action on the insights that the AI is bringing? And just delivering a report is not an action. I'm talking about a real action, whether that's a machine-based action or a human-based action that actually ties it in where it'll have an impact in the business. And so I think that, keep that in the back of your mind as you approach any of these projects, even if they don't involve chickens or blue jays.
That's great. So we have some questions coming in the comment section. So the first one is, you've mentioned the importance of aiming AI at a valuable business goal. What are some of the other challenges that businesses encounter in the adoption of AI, and some practical steps for addressing them?
Well, there's an ebook that I wrote that H2Oai has available, and we'll direct you to that. And it goes into a number of the challenges, but let me just touch on one or two. I think, especially for companies that are just getting started with this, one of the biggest challenges is to get consensus among the stakeholders within the company And if you're working with some outside source in terms of getting data with them as well. And so kind of building a data culture, getting people involved early, helping them understand the process, how it's going to give you insights. They don't need to look at the details inside the model unless they too are data science experts. Right. But just to be able to get that consensus built helps get everybody together on a project, and that makes a tremendous difference. And that kind of ties into a second big challenge, is how do you actually build an AI team? And you may have right. data scientists on staff. You may be planning to hire them. Maybe you're going to embed one and sort of have a ripple effect of their knowledge. Maybe you hire AI as a service. But you also can use people who already have good programming and data skills and sort of up-level their skills. That's not that far away from what they need to have to be some part of that data science team, which is really a cross-skills team. So I think those are two kind of practical ways to start to address challenges.
Right. And how does someone know what AI project will work or be valuable?
Well, the best answer, of course, is that you need to have a crystal ball and be able to just take the future. But then I guess if you have that, you don't actually need the AI. I think that the way to go about this, recognize, first of all, that a lot of these projects are experimental. They have tremendous potential payoff, but there's no guarantees. And that's one reason you want to get started early, start to build experience, try kind of an obvious project, something that is easier and can pay off as you begin to build experience, and that makes this more likely to work. One of the ways that you can tell whether something is going to work, though, is to test kind of internally whether you're asking the right question. Again, a question that's tied into a business process, but on the other side of the technical side of that, is it a question that can be refined down to a way that AI can address it? Is it something that can, be done by a machine, a computer? And that really is something you have to work back and forth between the people who have domain knowledge, including business knowledge is specialized knowledge, and people who have the expertise to work with the algorithms, build the models, and so forth, and make sure that that will work. And so one issue is, do you start with the data? Do you start with the question? And you can really go either way. I think if you're new to this, I recommend starting with a business question that you already know you want to answer. And instead of trying to make up something new, and look at that, work with your data scientist and try to determine which of those could be improved by AI, which would be addressable, maybe to automate a bottleneck in a step, or look at data that's just too large of a data set for humans to easily be able to do in a reasonable time. And then immediately the question is, do you have the data to address that? But it can go the other way.
Yes, that's really important.
Yeah, and you could start with the data and explore that and see if it gives you an idea. But I think starting with the question, if you're new to this, is probably the easiest.
Yes, great advice. And can you describe some of the opportunities that can deliver real impact to enterprises?
Well, the one thing to recognize is that there are opportunities, things that people have done in other fields, and you can certainly learn by what they've done. And you can do that by two different ways. You can look within your sector. If you're in financial industry, look for what other people are doing for, say, fraud detection, but financial companies are businesses too, so they look at customer 360, customer sentiment, how to do discounts or best offers, how to avoid churn. But the other issue is, besides looking within your sector, is look across sector, because let's just take those issues for the financial sector, and they apply to other things as well. Telecommunications companies have different ways to look at how to predict and then avoid customer churn, and use AI to do that. They too, all companies have security issues and want to protect themselves against attack. All of these companies are businesses, so they need to be able to look at customer 360, customer sentiment. So learn by the shape of the problem that somebody else has used, the type of data, the type of question, as well as looking within that industry to see how they applied it to that industry. And one of the best ways is to look for bottlenecks in your company that could be
Mm-hmm.
automated, to also be able to think about what human decisions. This doesn't all have to be done by an AI decision. You can
Right.
use AI to enrich information that ultimately is coming back to a human. That's often true in therapeutics and diagnostics in the healthcare industry, where the AI may enrich the knowledge that's coming in from, say, reading test results and so forth. But ultimately, the decision about the diagnosis and treatment comes back to the human physician.
Right. And if a business is already working, why add AI?
Because it's cool.
Well, it is cool.
I think that is one thing that draws people to it. And yes, it is actually cool.
Yeah.
But there's a much stronger reason. And it really goes in two directions. I think the most general one is that by using AI, by using machine learning, you have systems that are adaptable. You're not just programming how you're going to interact with the world. It's a combination of programming and data. So an AI model is actually formed by the data that trains it, and it can be retrained. And it's reacting to data as it comes in. So it's much more adaptable to the world as the world changes. It also means you constantly are rolling out new models and retraining, because a model that works beautifully in one set of circumstances will then not work properly as the world changes. And if there's anything 2020 has taught us, is even things we take for granted, the world will change. But even in less extreme years, this is just a fact. And so by working AI into your business process, into the way you interact with customers, into the way you make decisions, it's adding a level of flexibility, the ability to pivot to new conditions. I know H2Oai has worked with so many different companies to be able to deal with these changes that have come with COVID, with the pandemic, and not just with healthcare companies, so they certainly have done that, but with retail companies, with suppliers, with people involved in the supply chain. And they're just rigid traditional programming it just can't respond as fast as this ability to come back and have data inform your model and retrain your model and get back out and deal with the world as it changes.
Right. And what about AI technology? How can people tell what it's best?
Well, we're both doing some work with H2Oai, so I think the answer is better be H2Oai is a good thing to look at. But let me give you actually a very serious answer to that. There is no best tool. There is no best technology. And that absolutely does not mean that all of the technologies or tools are of equal quality. They're not. But there are some real stars out there. And companies, we see this, I've seen this for years, companies that are really successful working with AI, they're putting it to work in their company, they have big experienced AI teams. Individual data scientists, not just across the team, will usually work with several different technologies or tools in their toolkit, 3, 4, 5 different things. Maybe they like TensorFlow, they like R, they use Stanford NLP. They'll use a number of different things, and they'll use new things as they come out. And it's not just personal quirkiness, it's that no single AI technology is exactly the right fit for every situation. Again, you have to fit it to the situation, to the data, and try out several different things. But without joking, I'm quite serious. I think that I would recommend that people certainly have H2O AI, either the H2O3, the free version, the basic version,
the open source.
Or driverless is an amazing platform, as at least one of the tools in their toolkit. And let's take driverless as an example. The reason I think it matters is exactly for the reason that people are going to use multiple things. You can use multiple other tools with the driverless platform, but driverless automates some of the steps. It helps you see the results as you're testing things out. It lets you test many different things, different algorithms, different approaches, different tools, different data, and do that very, very quickly and in a way that it can be seen and explained to other people. And so because of that, it lets you go in and try many different approaches, and then you'll know if using the algorithms and so forth, and there are many of them that are offered through the driverless platform, if that's the best fit for that particular situation at that particular point in time, or if something else is, it'll give you pointers to that. So you can try more things faster, and often H2O will be your best choice. Sometimes something else will, but you'll find that out faster by using a technology like the H2O driverless platform. So I think it's it plus a handful of...
Yeah, and there's a 21-day trial for driverless AI. So I can add the link to the comments, and then if you want to test it for 21 days, just sign up. So it's pretty easy.
I really recommend that. I've been impressed since I've been with H2O to hear from customers who came in there, some of their data scientists coming and doing internal talks to our team from the customer team. And they literally, I'm not making this up, they're bouncing, they're excited. What I kept hearing was, it sounded good, but I was a little skeptical. But as soon as I got my hands on it, so I think for people who are experienced especially, I hear that, as soon as I got my hands on it. So it really changes the way their process works. And I think it's certainly worth, especially if you have some experience already with building models, is use that 21-day free trial and see what that feels like.
Yeah, and I can also share the link to the training center, and there are some tutorials.
Bruna, I've lost your sound for a moment. I don't know if people can still hear me. Oh, now you're back. I did hear that you pointed out the tutorials, and that's a great suggestion. Also on the H2O site, there are some really good quick summaries of different use cases and different solutions. So again, in terms of deciding how it can fit with your company, that's a good place to go just to see what other people are doing. And it'll begin to give you ideas about how this might work out in your own situation. H2O also has a very active open source community, really worldwide, until this year, in-person events, and now continuing, I believe, yes, with virtual events. And,
yes.
That's a great way to find out more, not just about this technology, but you'll talk to people who are using many different things and many different approaches. And that's a great way to get tied into a lot more of expertise and understanding what people are finding works and what they've tried that hasn't worked for them.
Yes, definitely. So thank you, Ellen, for taking the time today and answering the great questions. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who joined us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Ellen, I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to share before we close the broadcast.
Yeah, just for one thing, I want to mention that I'm doing a webinar with H2O on the 3rd of December, and that'll get announced, I think, via this Twitter and the LinkedIn as well. I think it's at 11 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. I'm not 100% sure, but that's on the 3rd of December. And that webinar, we're going to focus in on one aspect of what we've talked about here today, and that's the conversation between the data scientist and the non-data scientist, and how to make that interaction can be difficult, but how to really dig in and make that work, because it has to work for these projects to work well going forward. And so would love to have people join that as well.
Yes, I will share the link to the webinar on in the comment section to make it easier.
So if you hold one thought in your mind as you go away from this, keep in mind that AI is a business process, and keep your eyes open for how you can tie it into the things that you're doing that where it could make a difference.
Right. Thank you so much, Ellen.
Bye. Bye-bye.